All right, guys, welcome to episode 2 of Tom and the Wolverines MMA show. Uh, I'm the Wolverine, that's Tom, and
Hello again.
today we're going to talk about the champ debate, whether fighters should be allowed to be a double champ and retain their first belt, and then continue on in another division. Our other topic today is, of course, the fight night coming up this weekend, which is UFC on ESPN 68. We're going to talk about the main card, and just going to go through all of the main card fights and give some predictions, and then we'll see if we have any time left. All right, so Tom, our first topic is champ debate. Should somebody who has a title in one division be able to move up a division and fight for a second belt and then still keep the lighter weight belt? What's your thoughts on that, Tom?
Yeah, a case by case, okay, a fighter by fighter basis. In my opinion, if we're going for a perspective of what's best for the fan and not necessarily what's best for the fighter or for the UFC. So I guess there'd be three different special interest groups that would have an interest in that, right? That if we're talking about the fan, and I think just for everybody, the best thing would be really on a fighter by fighter basis, because it's possible that a fighter can cut back and make 145 again, and if they want to be 145 and 155 pound champ. And like, for example, with Islam Makhachev, why they would not want him to go back to 155 and defend both, I have no idea, because that would make him a superstar everywhere. And especially in Russia, they'd get that big audience. So why the UFC would resist that, I don't know, because I do think, but that must mean that maybe the fighters don't want to take that many fights, and they don't want to have enough fights in both divisions. But it seems like they let fighters wait way too long to fight anyway. But I think on a fighter by fighter basis, if the fighter can go back and make weight again, he should be able to be a double champ status. And if the fighter acknowledges that their intention is to defend both belts and to be active enough to keep both belts active, then 100% that's the way it should go, right? But if the guy can't go back ever anyway, like for example, Ilya Tuporia said he's not going to ever do 145 again. So
Exactly.
that's that. But it would still be in the fighter's best interest to lie and say, yeah, I'm going to go back and defend 145 after I win 155 and get that champ status. But no matter what, if the fighter can go back and cut weight again 100%, then everybody should be on board with that. Don't you agree with that, Jeff?
I think we're pretty much in agreement. Yeah, my thoughts on it were, number one, do they intend to fight in both weight classes? Are they going to cut down to that other weight class still? Because if they're not, then what's the point? There's no reason for them to keep that other belt. Then my other thought, like you said, the level of activity. And my third thought was the fighter, they have to have pretty much cleared out that lighter weight class before they're going to move up. So there's not like a line of people waiting to fight that person. I and other than that, I think somebody should be able to be champ. I do wonder if they thought that maybe Makhachev is not active enough to be defending two separate belts. And maybe they thought, once he goes up to 170, what are the chances of him really wanting to go back to 155? Yeah, I mean, and if you look historically, how many fighters have won a belt in a second division and then dropped back down and defended that belt? Do you know offhand
Well,
how many, Tom?
no, but hypothetically he probably wouldn't. But you don't need to replace that 155 title immediately anyway. So if Islam wins at 170, he's champ. That's it. And then as soon as then maybe in 2 months the lightweight belt is relinquished by Islam and 255-pound, the 1 and 2 guy fight for it. But otherwise, what they do is they book Islam's next. Say Islam when they book him again at 155, but maybe in 4 months or something like that, and ask him if he would really want to do that in 4 to 6 months. Why not? But I don't know. I don't know. The UFC breaks the rules all the time.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you want champ at least for a couple of months, and let's just see what happens. Let that little entity of its own go. Maybe Islam being champ, where Habib never did, brings their whole brand to another level. And unfortunately, not that the UFC, unfortunately, is always pretty UFC number one, and they don't necessarily care if Islam grows or not. But by Islam growing, I would think the UFC would grow, and it would all be good. So I don't see why they would ever resist that. At least temporarily, it should be, put it that way. It should at least be champ until they figure out what to do.
Yeah.
Which should be figured out in a couple months, depending on how the fighter did at 170 or the heavier weight division. They can figure it out. Unlike this Jon Jones thing, which they dragged on for like 2 years.
Yeah.
And they have to make, and for some reason they have to make a decision with the weight divisions within 2 months. No way. Let them be champ for at least 2 months, right? And then if they can't go back down, cool, then you relinquish it. So at least they had it for 2 months.
I definitely see where you're coming from. I think, I don't know. I mean, they let Volkanovski move up to fight twice for the lightweight title after he was already 145-pound champ. So, I mean, but I think they had a better, they were pretty sure that he would move back down. I don't know. I think maybe it is that they're thinking once this person's moved up, why would they want to cut weight and come back and defend this weight and this title? The one that I definitely think they should allow to move up, just because she's already cleared out 115 is Wei Li. If she wants to move up and fight against Valentina, that one I'm totally 100% on board with. Let her keep that 115-pound belt, because if I go to the rankings here, let me pop them up on my screen. Okay, this is the fights we're talking about next. Let me go to our rankings. So there's still not what I'm wanting here. Give me 1 second. So if we go to Wei Li's weight class, women's strawweight, and we click on her, she has wins over number 2, number 3, number 4, and number 5 in her weight class. So, I mean, the number 1 ranked girl, she hasn't fought yet, but she's fought all the rest of the top 5. So her moving up to challenge Valentina definitely makes sense. Let her keep that belt. She can come back. She's been fairly active. I mean, she's already beaten the top 5 or 4 of the top 5 girls. So, I mean, let her try to fight Valentina, see what happens on that fight, and I definitely think there's no reason she wouldn't cut back down to 115 to fight the number 1 contender her next fight. So that one I definitely would agree with for sure, and I like what you said, it being a case-by-case basis, and number 1, the fighter's got to have the intent to, I definitely want to come back and defend the belt in my other division. Whoop, I turned off my screen. So, yeah, I definitely agree with you on that. What time are we at here? We're at 9 minutes so far. So, any other thoughts on that, Tom?
No, that's it. I also thought, like I said, there's 3 different groups that are interested in what the champ does, right? The fans, the fighters, and the UFC. But for all 3, I would think they would benefit from letting them be champ for at least a couple months.
Yeah.
I don't see why the UFC. But sometimes they like to promote also a new 155-pound champ that night, and then they get a bigger fight because we get a new belt holder at 170 and 155. Hypothetically, if those are the 2 weight divisions in contention, but then in that case, the fighter might not have that option. Who knows? But ultimately, I think that would be up to the UFC. I think that would be the only case where you might not let them be champ at least until the lower weight division has two guys fight each other. But I could see the UFC wanting to do them both on the same night and getting a bigger day. I think that's how the UFC makes its money, is on those few and far between big shows. Like hypothetically, I don't know how much they made, but when they did the Sphere, they made a big show out of it.
Mm-hmm.
They might have made a ton of money there. When they did the Mayweather-McGregor thing, or a couple other fights, they made a lot. Where the other fights, some of the fights, I bet they don't make as much money.
Yeah.
Okay. No, that's because that's the other group that can change that whole thing. If champ is an option, is ultimately up to the UFC, because UFC owns the belt, right?
Yeah.
The UFC can kind of control who gets it, or at least who fights for it and when.
Yeah. Speaking of the Sphere, getting off subject for just a second, did you hear Sean O'Malley's coach blamed the lighting in the Sphere for Sean O'Malley's loss to Merab?
No, he used that as
yeah,
that affected
he was
him.
saying, yeah, he thought that the bright lights and all the crazy stuff on all the different screens may have affected his ability to fight Merab. I'm like, that's crazy.
I did hear him. Yeah, I did hear him say that, but I was surprised and thought that was probably legit, but not a good excuse.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I remember fights. Well, half my career I couldn't see my opponent most of the fight, anyways. Before I got my contacts, and then after I started fighting with contacts, and I got a contact knocked out, and I continued fighting for a whole nother round and won a unanimous decision. So, I mean, I don't understand how somebody could say, oh, the lighting that messed with him. I don't know. I mean, unless they completely turn off the lights on you and it's dark in the cage, I think lighting isn't going to affect your ability to fight. Anything else you wanted to say on the whole champ debate, Tom?
Nope. Thank you for asking about it. That's my thought.
So we're both pretty much in agreement, case by case. We have to have a fighter that wants to defend both belts and is active enough to do it. I definitely think, if somebody got the second belt and, a few months later said, no, I don't feel like I want to cut back down and weight. Oh, and the question I asked you earlier about who was the only fighter who won a belt in a second division and then went back down and defended the first belt, it was Amanda Nunes. But the difference there is she had beaten most of the girls at 135, and the 145-pound weight class in the UFC for women at that point, was always just created basically for Chris Cyborg to come and fight in the UFC. Once Amanda had beaten her for that belt, everybody that she was fighting at 145, and most of the girls that were fighting at 145 were all girls from the 135-pound class that decided, hey, I'm not going to cut weight for this fight. And so, I mean, it wasn't really even a weight class, so it kind of, even though it's the one exception, where somebody defended the belt in two divisions, you can't really look at that and say, oh yeah, that's why you can do it. But she didn't have anybody to really fight on a regular basis at 145. So I definitely think it was a lot different than most of these other weight classes. Anything else on that, Tom, or should we move on?
Yeah, I thought of something funny.
Go for it.
Really, because you said you can't think of a fighter that went back down and defended at the lighter weight. And what was the name of the show that Conor won the belt in Ireland? Was it Cage Warriors? That was the one that he bragged about. He was champ at 145 and 155.
Yeah.
He would say that he was the he would say. Let me see if I can do the accent. Mate, I was the original. Oh shit, I have to practice that. He would say he was the original one that went from 145 up to 155, and then he went back down to 145 and won the belt again. He would say that Cage Warriors was the equivalent of the UFC probably, and because he went and got both belts there and then came back to the UFC and went back down. So he would say he did it already.
Yeah.
But you're right.
Except
As far as in the UFC only, I can't think of
Yeah,
anybody
except that McGregor never defended either belt in the UFC. So, yeah.
That's true.
I mean, it was impressive that he was able to get both belts, that he was able to fight in 3 different weight classes and have knockouts in 3 different weight classes was also pretty impressive. So, I mean, you can't take that away from Conor McGregor for sure. All right, are you ready to move on to the next card coming up here? All right, I am going to pop it up on the screen here. I've got the rankings, and now we're going to go to UFC on... Oh, hang on here 1 second. All right, so the main event, which we'll talk about in a minute, is Erin Blanchfield versus Macy Barber. We're going to just talk about the main card fights. The first fight of the main card is Zachary Reese versus Dusko Todorovic. I am not super familiar with both of these guys. I did look up their... I'm going to make some predictions, and I'm going to give a little bit of a disclaimer on my predictions. I did not watch tape of all these fighters that I wasn't super familiar with. I looked at all their records. I looked at who they fought before, the quality of their opponents, how they'd finished people, and that's kind of how I came up with these predictions. So I'm going to go to that first one. So I'm going with, on this one, both these fighters came off of Dana White's Contender Series over the last few years. Reese is 8-2, coming off one loss in his last fight. Dusko is 12-5, coming off of 2 straight losses. The first loss that he had was by a knee injury that he had during the fight, and the second was a TKO. Neither guy has been able to get on any kind of winning streak or anything like that since they've been in the UFC. It's basically a must-win for both guys. I'm just from what I looked at on their records, I'm going to predict Reese by a stoppage in the first round. Just from looking at what I had seen on their records, I think he's got a good shot at getting a stoppage in round 1. The next fight I'm going to go on to, and stop me if you're familiar with any of these fighters and you want to talk about them, Tom, stop me. I know there are a lot of somewhat obscure fighters. This next one is actually a little bit bigger fight. It's Caitlin Vieira versus Macy Chiasson. I looked at both their records. They are both, this is a tough one to call for sure. Caitlin Vieira's last fight was to Kayla Harrison, so you can't hold that against her, and she did still go the distance with her. She's got wins over Holly Holm and Miesha Tate, 2 former champions. Macy Chiasson, she's also got some really good stoppage wins. Chiasson is coming off of 2 straight wins by stoppage. My prediction, even though I do think Macy's a tough opponent, I'm going with Vieira by decision due to her experience against the top women fighters in her division. But like I said, this is a super close fight. This one could really go either way. If I had to pick one, I'd pick Vieira. We're going to go on to the next fight, which is Dustin Jacoby versus Bruno Lopez. Now, Dustin Jacoby is a Colorado fighter, so, I like him. I followed his career for a long time. He fought in Glory Kickboxing. He's super experienced in kickboxing and MMA. He rebounded his last fight after getting knocked out by Dominic Reyes. But, Dominic Reyes is no slouch. Most people feel Dominic Reyes beat Jon Jones in their fight years ago and that he should have been the champ.
Yes, Dominic Reyes won 3-2.
Exactly.
His kids immediately called him and said the fix is in. Yep. That was bullshit. The UFC is fake now because Dominic Reyes clearly won the first 3 rounds.
Exactly.
But they said round two was close enough that you could have given it to Jones, I guess. But I do remember that one.
I definitely thought.
Said, well, I guess you can't run from the champ for the last 2 rounds and expect to win.
Yeah.
Because, for example, pride fighting would count the later rounds more than the earlier rounds because you would expect that would be the direction the fight would continue to go.
Exactly.
Since even though Reyes was dominating Jones the first 2 or 3 rounds, that he was fatiguing and fading, perhaps if they had a 6th round, Jon would have had even more of an advantage and ended up finishing Reyes. Reyes might not have been able to keep going.
Yeah.
But
while we're on the subject, Dominic Reyes, man, that guy has definitely made a comeback. I think, one more fight, he could potentially be challenging for a belt. So, that guy, I am super impressed because most people would not come back from the losses he had. I believe 4 straight losses, 3 after the Jones one, and they were all finishes. He kind of got, I know people have talked about like a curse where somebody will have a really close fight for a title, and then all of a sudden they just go on a crazy losing streak, and sometimes it's the fighters you never even heard of. So, but like the prediction on that fight, let me look back at my notes. As much as I like Jacoby, and he's coming off of a 3rd round KO victory over Vitor Petrino back in December, Bruno Lopez is 14-1. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. I've got to go Bruno Lopez by decision on that one. I'd love for Jacoby to prove me wrong because, like I said, I follow that guy and I really like that guy as a fighter. He always shows a ton of heart. So I'd like to see Jacoby win, but my prediction is Bruno on that one. Next, we've got Billy Goff versus Ramiz Brahimaj. I'm not super familiar with all the other these guys. I looked through their records, and Goff is coming in. He's got a 9-3 record with 7 KOs, coming off of a decision loss. Ramiz is coming off of his only KO win over Mickey Gall, but has 10 wins by submission. So, he's got all of his fights are finishes, 11 victories, 10 submissions, 1 KO win. So I gotta go with Ramiz by submission, just based on all of that. If he gets Goff down, I think he's probably gonna submit him. And I said it by submission in round 1 because most of his submissions have been in the first round. Let's move on to the next fight. This is the co-main event, and it's Mateusz Gamrot versus Ludwig Klein. I'm not super familiar with Ludwig Klein. I know I've seen him fight, but Gamrot's the guy that supposedly Arman Tsarukyan turned down a rematch with when offered because Gamrot's a little bit lower in the rankings. To me, that was a stupid move on Tsarukyan's part. If he really did say, hey, I don't want to fight the guy that has a win over me because he's lower ranked, anytime you get a chance to avenge a loss, I always think go for it, So Gamrot, I'm going with him on that one. Probably by unanimous decision. He's just got too much experience against the top guys in the division. He's fought a lot of really tough fighters. So I'm definitely going with Gamrot in that one. Now we get to the main event. Let me scroll up here to our main event. We've got Erin Blanchfield versus Macy Barber. Let's look at the two of them and the rankings really quick here.
MMA Guru would say that's a terrible main event. That you can't have women in the main event that's not named Ronda Rousey, I guess.
These are two of the best, though. Let's see. The 125 ranked. Erin Blanchfield is ranked number... All right. What is going on with these rankings? Let me refresh this because this happened to me a minute ago. I'm not sure. Oh, you know what? That's women's pound for pound. That's what's wrong. Okay, we need to go to women's flyweight. That's what was messing it up on me. Okay, so we have Miss Macy Barber is ranked number 5. Erin Blanchfield is ranked number 4. Blanchfield's only loss, I believe, is to Manon Ferrero, who just went the distance with Valentina Shevchenko. Barber has a pretty good string of wins put together. Let me see what my notes say. I'm going to go with Erin Blanchfield on this by submission in the second round, just because she is so good. I mean, she's beaten Rose Namajunas mostly on the feet in that fight. She beat Jessica Andrade, took her down and submitted the former champ. So I definitely feel like that's a fight that Erin Blanchfield can win. She's just super strong and has the better ground game. I know Barber's definitely the better striker, but I think she's just going to have her hands full with the strength of Erin Blanchfield. Are you familiar with either of those girls? Have you watched?
Oh yeah, I have seen them both, but I don't really remember like Aaron Blanchfield. I've seen fight, like I have seen both of them fight in tough fights, but honestly, I don't remember all the details.
I'm not sure what. I'm not even sure what where Barber's fighting. I know at one point she was at Team Alpha Male. I heard an interview with her a couple years ago, and she was at Team Alpha Male. She's tough, and she's got 14. She's 14-2. Erin Blanchfield's 13-2. But I really feel like that strength and the grappling edge, and Blanchfield's tough on the feet, and she's just way better on the ground. So I got to go with Blanchfield in that one for sure.
Oh, yeah, All right. I'd love to watch. I'd have to watch that. You know, they do that. What do they call it? Embedded for UFC, where they would profile her and Erin Blanchfield. See if she's out of Uriah Faber's team. I did hear good things about that being I would think that would be a great.
Barber was the one training. Barber was the one training out of Uriah Faber's team a while back. I'm not sure where Erin Blanchfield trains out of. And I don't know if she's even still there. I know she moved around quite a bit. So.
Barber.
Right, because I mean, if she is still with them, I do think that will help her a little bit against Erin Blanchfield, but I just think the girl's too strong for her. Speed-wise, they're pretty close. Barber might have a speed edge, but that's that strength and that grappling edge. I feel like Blanchfield gets it done in that one. All right, so we still have a few minutes. I was going to save this for the next show, but I had a little bit of a conspiracy theory. I wanted to run it by you. I'm not sure if this has gone around at all. You can tell me if you've heard this anywhere. But we've been talking about Jon Jones in the heavyweight division a lot last show, and why they need that fight to happen. But I don't know how aware you are of the situation with the UFC and their streaming deal with ESPN. It's about over. I'm not sure the exact date that it ends, but they were trying to get them to renew. It didn't sound like they were going to, and I guess there's more signs that ESPN is going to let the UFC go on its way and be streamed somewhere else. I know there's been a lot of speculation that potentially Netflix was going to get the deal with the UFC, and I mean, who knows? Maybe Netflix drops some of their goofy made-for-Netflix movies, and instead of paying The Rock or somebody, millions of dollars to be on a straight-to-Netflix movie, that money goes to the UFC and pays for a 5-year contract or whatever for them to stream them. But then the word is that eliminates pay-per-view. Maybe your cost of Netflix goes up $5 a month, but you get to watch every UFC fight you could ever want. I don't know. Have you heard about that much, Tom?
Yes, but no, I didn't know that. I didn't know how. I thought they were still going to make us pay pay-per-view prices because
I'm not sure. I know they've said people stream the fights and that if they moved away from charging that extra money for the fights, then I don't know, they could probably get a lot more sponsorship money because more people are watching it, even if they're watching it for free as part of a subscription service.
Interesting.
I don't know. It's an interesting concept. I know I had watched earlier in the year there was a video on MMA on Point, and they discussed the UFC getting away from the pay-per-view model and going to a streaming service where you paid a certain amount each month and you got to watch all the UFCs. And they said, the way you make up a lot of that revenue is you go to instead of having fights at the Apex all the time, all your fight nights you do them in a big city, and you make your money off of your gate at the events, and you sell out all these different events all over the country and all over the world. Because like when they did that show down in Mexico, it was packed. When they did the show in England a while back, it was packed. And then they're back in the Apex with a small crowd, and it does seem like people want to see the fights. I don't know. But here's where my theory comes in. The UFC is trying to market to different streaming companies and trying to say, hey, look, it's worth you paying us a ton of money to have our events on your streaming service. But one of their selling points is, hey, we got this guy Jon Jones. He's the heavyweight champ. He's our big star, and he's going to be defending his belt. We got this guy Conor McGregor. He's going to come back and fight. He's a big draw. He like sells out all these arenas and has the biggest pay-per-view buys ever. I mean, everybody is going to get Netflix to watch Conor McGregor fight this next month, right? So by having the illusion of these things could happen, maybe that's part of their big selling point, and maybe that's I'm sure they probably have a good idea. Conor McGregor's never coming back and fighting again. We talked about Jon Jones has said the UFC knows my intentions. They know my plans. It's up to them to announce them to you. Maybe he already told them, hey, I'm retired. Maybe they're giving him a certain amount of money to not come out and say, hey, I'm retired. I know he hinted on that video a couple weeks ago that he was done fighting. But maybe the UFC is giving him a little bit of money here and there to, keep saying he's coming back and fighting. And maybe he has zero intention of doing that, but it's a selling point till they get this new contract, and then they're like, oh man, he's not coming back. What do you think, Tom?
Well, as far as Conor McGregor coming, I think he did not take enough brain damage to where he can't because of that, because I think that affects people if they took a lot of punches in their career, if they want to come back 10 years later or 5 years later. But for Conor McGregor, I think it all depends on whether he wants to handle on his drug addiction. So I think he's pretty far gone with cocaine, alcohol, and who knows what others. And
that he's going to be the next president of Ireland, so there's that.
Yeah, I talked to that red pill guy. He's the Irish. He's got an Irish MMA podcast like this, and he has political opinions. And I asked him how would it affect if Conor McGregor became I don't know if it's called president or what over there, but he said it wouldn't, and that it would be business as usual. And he said that the elites of Ireland definitely don't want Conor McGregor, and it's like a joke, like to them, they say, but it wouldn't really affect anything. Everything would continue as usual. But as far as Conor coming back, I don't know. I think he's a drug addict, and that's the problem with Conor McGregor now.
I think a lot of it's just the money and the lifestyle.
I think he's been in and out of and privately, and I think he probably parties a lot, and he probably should spend a lot more time in rehab and get the heck else. I think he's using a lot of cocaine. I think he's using a lot of alcohol, and he's using probably a lot of other drugs too that I don't know are. So I pray that he can get a handle on the drug addiction more than anything else. Poor guy, because that's going to be. Yeah, he's a very lucky, blessed individual, and he's a great fighter and everything. And if he did come back to fight now, I don't think he would be anywhere near as successful as he was when he was younger and full of energy at 145 pounds. But I think that Connor's biggest fight is with addiction.
Yeah, yeah. I don't think you put him in. If he were to come back, I don't think you put
But
Conor
as far as
McGregor in with a current anybody in the current 170 or 155. Maybe Nate Diaz comes back and they
yeah,
fight for a third time. I've heard that mentioned on a few of the programs
yeah. I
lately, but
forgot you asked.
we're talking
You
about,
asked
and
about.
then the Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall fight. If they're trying to keep the illusion that that's still going to happen or might happen, just so they can get a new streaming deal, and then once the contract's signed, like, oh, Jones says he's not coming back, and they move on and have Tom Aspinall fight somebody else for the undisputed belt. Um,
I don't think, yeah, in the event, like with the last thing that you had asked about is, yeah, the UFC might trade hands networks and leave ESPN and basically, like Dana White said, ESPN may not renew him.
mm-hmm.
ESPN may not want him because UFC might want. They probably generate a certain amount of money and they want a certain amount of money. So I think if it did go over to Netflix, that'd be great. I could see Dana White saying, "You're going to pay us this much, but you're going to get an extra $5 a month from all these people, a million people that watch these things, and I guarantee 2 or 3 million people will do it." And there's your instead of, and I think that would be a much smarter move for the UFC in that to string together those big events. I imagine those big events, whether it's the Sphere or McGregor Mayweather or whatever it was, are pretty stressful for the
Mm-hmm.
promoter and for the team that has to put it together. Anything goes wrong and they get laughed. I bet it's pretty hard. It'd be easier if you could just have a guaranteed income throughout the year because you've built up your brand of the UFC to be worth a certain amount of money. So if it went to Netflix and all I had to do was buy Netflix for $25 a month or $30 and not do every single month like I'm doing now, that'd be great for me. So I'd get free Netflix and pay less. So I
Yeah.
hope they do that.
Yeah, I think it would work out, and the way, like what
That's what
you
I thought about
said,
that.
like what you said about doing one big event, the numbered events are the big ones. Maybe I know people are complaining about like the card Saturday. They're like, oh, there's no big names. Maybe that way you spread out your big names more. You have one main event fight, maybe the co-main event are the big fights on the card, and all your big
Another
fights are
thing that
spread out.
it might get a lot easier for other countries hold UFC events if it went to Netflix because let's say we don't pay $80 every time there's a pay-per-view. Those English guys that want to watch an American have to watch it at 6 o'clock in the morning. Is what
Yeah.
MMA Guru is saying. They're up at 6 in the morning to watch these fights, and all they want to do is see what happens and go back to sleep. And that's so. If it was you don't pay $80, you can just record it
Yeah.
on Netflix and watch it. So it might be because you're only paying, but you have to pay $5 a month or 10 a month or 30 a month or whatever for the Netflix. I think that'd be for us UFC fans if they could do that, so we
Yeah.
could get pay per view for less money.
Well, I remember
Because
back
I know
in.
you can.
Go ahead, Tom. Are you there?
Yep, I'm still here.
I remember back in the early days, back during like early Pride events and everything, before you could like actually watch them here on, I remember having to like order. I would order bootleg tapes from guys and they would send you the Japanese versions of videos, and you'd watch Pride like a month after it happened on VHS. And I also remember, some of the big fights, staying up till like middle of the night just to like see the results posted on a website that took forever to load because it didn't have high speed internet yet. I remember back in those days, so I mean, I can see why people in England and other countries get upset that they're having to wait or they're having to, watch UFC super early in the morning because they're trying to cater to the American fans. But I don't know if all these other countries really have pay per view. I think America, the United States, is the big main pay per view market, and a lot of those other countries, it's just on the regular TV. But I could be wrong on that. Definitely have to do some research. But definitely the biggest source of money for pay per views, definitely the United States. So I can see why they want to cater to the American fans. But if all of a sudden it's not, pay per view, then, it could be on whatever time it needs to be on to be in Japan or in England or France or wherever the fights happen to be taking place. Just at the regular times, the fights would take place in the evening, and then Americans aren't paying a huge pay-per-view bill to watch something at 2 in the morning. So they're just getting it as part of a subscription service. They can watch it 2 in the morning if they want, or they can watch it the next day. So yeah, yeah. So I don't know. I definitely feel like maybe the UFC is dangling that Jon Jones carrot to try to get a new deal set. But we'll see what happens. I'm sure we'll be talking about this a lot more because I don't see that fight getting signed anytime soon, even though Dana White has said that it's going to get signed. My goal was to not go over 30 minutes. We're at 41 minutes. So anything else you wanted to add, Tom?
Nope, I think that's very long. So thank
All
you,
right.
Eddie, for.
Okay, so
next. I guess I'll sign out as soon as you tell me.
On Tuesday we'll try to do another show. We're gonna try to recap the first episode of The Ultimate Fighter. Talk a little bit about that. I watched it. Tom has not yet, and just in case anybody else hasn't watched it, I didn't want to do any spoilers. The live events, I don't mind doing spoilers,
okay,
but I know people don't.
I'll watch it by next week,
people won't get to watch The Ultimate Fighter sometimes Tuesday evening. So we'll talk about that. We'll do a recap of this fight night that I gave the predictions. See if any of my predictions were right, which ones were right, how far off I was on some of them, and then we'll go on from there and hopefully do another show the end of next week. So I'm the Wolverine. He's Tom, and that's the end of this show. We'll catch you next week for episode 3.
Okay, thanks, you guys.